Portents of Fear is a horror fiction podcast which is intended for mature audiences. Discretion is advised. Welcome, Fearlings, to another weird and horrifying tale made just for you. I am your host, Michulhu, and I'll be your guide into the macabre and mysterious. For tonight's story, we learn about lost youth in The Farm. Before we get started, take a moment to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a single terrifying story. 7 days out. Marvin hid just behind a redwood. He could feel her getting closer. Cynthia was a master of hide-and-go-seek. He stood completely still, trying his best not to breathe. The air was freezing, and his mittens had begun to lose the fight. "Found you," she proclaimed, standing just inches from him. He grimaced. "How?" Marvin asked. "There's snow tracks all the way to this tree. You should have picked a place closer to the farm where people are walking. That way you could have hidden your path. Don't worry, you did great." "Look, it's getting late. We need to head in." Marvin couldn't believe how stupid he was. He looked into her deep blue eyes and his legs weakened for a moment. She smiled as if she knew what he was thinking. It was what every boy at the farm thought when looking at her. Without saying anything, she started walking back. He followed, feeling shame for the physical reaction his body had. Lustful thoughts were a sign of a weak and sinful mind. To feel turned on meant you were a weird pervert. He bit the inside of his lip in penance until he felt a trickle of blood. "You turn 16 next week, right?" she asked, a few feet ahead of him. "Yeah, I'm studying for the ceremony now," he replied. She stopped just short of the farm's boundary and turned. "I turn 16 tomorrow. Do you know what that means?" "Yeah, I won't see you until you've chosen a husband," he replied sadly. He looked down, worried about more perverted thoughts bubbling up. She took her cold mitten, placed it under his chin, and raised it. Cynthia smiled, the fading light of the day showing her face in brilliant purples and reds. "I'm going to pick you." Marvin grinned. "Really? Okay, I would be honored to be your husband," he stammered. "Good. Survive your ceremony, and I'll be yours, and you'll be mine." Without thinking, he began to move in for a kiss, and that same snow-coated mitten found its way to his face. "Marvin, stop! You know the punishment for affection outside of wedlock," she scolded. He recoiled. Stupid pervert. Thinking again with the wrong brain. "I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking. I'm just excited. Don't say any more. Go home, repent. I'll do the same. I should have never told you my plan. I'm sorry. We shouldn't speak till the wedding, just to be safe. Good luck with the ceremony. I can't wait to be married to you." She turned and ran, leaving Marvin alone in the waning light. She was right, he knew, but he hated it. He arrived home a few minutes later. The place smelled of pot roast. He peeled off his winter gear in the mudroom, hanging it all up just as he had been taught. He sighed. The thought of not saying anything ran through his mind, but he knew better. Cynthia's mom would call, and if he said nothing, his punishment would be much greater. He entered the kitchen. The tiled floor was freezing on his bare feet. His mother was daydreaming as she cooked, not noticing he'd walked in. "Mom, we need to talk," he said. "What now?" she hissed. He told her about trying to kiss Cynthia, about his physical reaction at looking at her. Her stern face turned grim. "You know the rules, pervert. I've done everything in Shou'loth's name to make you a good person, but you just keep failing me." She was right. He felt like an idiot. Why couldn't he be a good person? What was wrong with him? The most amazing girl had picked him for marriage, and he couldn't keep it in for a week? Stupid, stupid, stupid. "You're going to be a man soon. You need to learn control." She removed the wooden spoon from a pot of boiling broth. Her hand tightened around its handle. Her face stiffened with rage. He took a deep breath. Late that night, after the screaming, Marvin lay in his bed, sore all over. He had finished crying. He'd done the right thing. He showed he could be truthful and faced his punishment. Shou'loth would have to see he was worthy of becoming an adult. At least he hoped. The window pane was encrusted with frost. The moon danced behind clouds, and wind gently flowed between the redwoods. He limped across the cold hardwood to peer outside. He realized the moon would be full on his birthday, a good omen. Flying between the stars and earth was an outsider plane. He smiled, wondering where it was going, half wishing he was going too. Outsiders were evil, not to be trusted. Only elders were allowed to interact with them. This was to sell the farm's crops and buy things the community needed. That was really all Marvin knew of it. He flicked on the light and picked up the black leather tome on his desk. It was the Black Flame, Shou'loth's Bible. He closed his eyes and prayed before opening it. On the front page it said, "The Black Flame by Ellis Wright, unabridged." The original was said to be inked with Ellis's blood, but Marvin had the 2010 edition. The farm printed the book every 20 years to replace older copies, but the text never changed. Ellis had been a prophet of the goddess and lived in a paradise called Hollywood. Marvin loved the stories about it all. His life in Hollywood seemed like a dream, a place where you could be whatever you wanted, or at least pretend to be. It wasn't clear. He wondered about other books besides The Black Flame. There was a rumor that years ago a woman had a stash of outsider books. They had strange names like The Catcher in the Rye, The Canterbury Tales, 1984, and The Shining. What gods wrote those books, he wondered. Her husband found the books, 20 in all, and brought them to the temple. They hung her by her feet in the farm's marketplace till she died a day later. The books were burned, and it was forbidden to speak of them again, but people did. He flipped to his favorite story, The Village of Rin. The priests taught that the farm was built on the exact location as Rin in 1970. It didn't make complete sense to Marvin, though. The place in the book was nothing like the farm. There was no black beach or ocean filled with children's souls. There was no giant redwood called Father Pine on a ridge, though they were surrounded by redwoods and mountains. There were no moors where women crossed to cast spells far away from the village. Finally, the people who lived in Rin had pale blue skin, while the people of the farm had light beige to dark brown skin. The priest said the changes happened over 1,000,000 years. Those people, primordial humans, were long dead. They'd angered the goddess, and she left Rin to fade into the dreamlands. The farm was its replacement. The one thing the farm had was the ruby bell. It was dug up right where the church was going to be built back in the 1970s, proving the story was real. But some still question its authenticity, not loudly, of course. Marcus Tatlam, the founder of the farm, is credited with finding the bell. When he rang it, it opened his mind to Shou'loth, and the rest was history. Marvin read The Village of Rin, carefully taking notes. He'd always loved studying not just the teachings of Shou'loth, but the history. Sometimes the two didn't line up, and that was fascinating. So engrossed in the black tome, he forgot his body's discomfort. 6 days out. Marvin's eyes felt heavy after reading half the night. It was Cynthia's birthday, which he'd forgotten. Now an adult, she wouldn't be at school. The day drug on without her, no one to smile at him from across the room or to eat lunch with. He could tell there were other boys missing her too. A few whispered that they would be the ones she would pick to marry. He knew better, and that made not seeing her a little easier. Of course, no one would guess she'd pick him, he thought. Marvin slid into self-loathing. Why would anyone pick him? All these emotions were something you shouldn't talk about. Your faith will take away your pain. At least that's what was taught. But the more he thought about faith, the more he felt it was the source of all his pain. 5 days out. The ruby bell rang from the church steps, which was odd because it was the middle of the week. The bell meant everyone was to meet. Marvin was excited. Cynthia would be there, hopefully. And sure enough, she was there, standing next to the ruby bell, dressed in white winter clothing with her maiden's crown. She'd been his best friend since they first met. There hadn't been a day without seeing her or talking to her. He felt like his heart was going to rip its way out of his chest. He waved, but she acted like he wasn't there. He wondered if she could see him, but she had to. He was right up front. She must not want us to get in trouble, he thought. Lots of time after the wedding to talk again. His mother grabbed his arm. What do you think you're doing? You cannot interact with a single woman unless you're a priest. You know that. Her hand pressed in firmly. Pain radiated out. Sorry, Mom. I just haven't seen her and... Quiet. You'll embarrass me again. I'll make an example of you right here and now. See if you get a wife after that, she warned. He could feel those near him looking, judging. He nodded. His brain delved into the old pattern. Why was he so stupid? How did he let these things keep happening? He was a few days from getting married. He just had to keep his head down and he'd be able to make his own way, with Shou'loth's blessing, of course. Roman, the high priest, took to the top of the stairs next to Cynthia. A man well into his 60s, he wore a gold and black robe with a silver head covering. He held a staff carved from redwood. The head was a golden eye with a ruby iris. Everyone fell silent. My friends, may Shou'loth bless you. As you all know, my beautiful wife Ophelia was taken by illness last fall. I loved her so much, but we put our lives in Shou'loth's hands, and that is what I did. Sister Cynthia came to me yesterday and proclaimed that I was to be her husband. My heart felt alive again. Shou'loth had indeed shown me the way. Marvin's throat dried. Rage boiled in his heart. She picked him? Why would she lie? He started to move forward, but his mother placed her hand on his shoulder and gripped firmly. Please, tell the people how you came to this decision, Roman said. Marvin glanced around looking for outrage, but found none. He couldn't be the only one to see that this was wrong. I was praying to Shou'loth, asking who my husband should be. She told me my happiness rested with High Priest Roman, so that is who I sought out as my husband, she declared. The crowd cheered, save for Marvin, who stared at her with furious eyes. His heart broke with every word. He wrapped his decrepit arms around the young woman's shoulders and smiled, but she hesitated just for a moment. Marvin caught it. There was a look in her eye. She wasn't happy. He knew she was putting on a fake smile. Every teenager and kid knew that smile. He let his heart take control. This isn't right! She didn't pick him! She picked me! He's an old man! Cynthia, don't do this! Whatever they told you, you don't have to do this, he yelled. He knocked his mother away. She sat on the ground stunned. Pushing past people, he was determined to make it to the stage. 4 acolytes rushed down the stairs right as he reached the bottom step and tackled Marvin to the ground. The crowd yelled at him. Cynthia covered her face in embarrassment. Now, everyone, calm down. This is a learning situation. Marvin has always been passionate, always leading with his heart. But we mustn't turn our backs on him. We must lead him back to the path of the goddess. His birthday is soon, so he may have hoped that Cynthia would pick him. She did pick me! She told me just a couple of days ago. Cynthia, why are you doing this? Marvin yelled. The 4 men kept him pinned to the ground. He squirmed and bucked but could not free himself. Cynthia raised her hand. Yes, I told him I'd marry him, but that was before I became a woman, before I understood the world as I do now. The ceremony taught me so much about myself and Shou'loth. She is the one who should pick my husband, not me. I'm sorry, Marvin, but what I said to you was nothing more than a child's daydream. The Cynthia you knew died in the transformation ceremony. I don't even remember ever caring for you. It will make more sense when you do your own ceremony. He stopped screaming and just lay there, corpse-like. He couldn't believe any of it. The acolytes let go, but he didn't move. What was left for him? His heart felt crushed by the weight of her words. He knew it was too good to be true, yet he bought into it. She was too good for him. He understood. His heart broke. There you go, Marvin. Just give in. It's for the best. I know this is your lowest moment, but if you let Shou'loth into your heart, she'll save you too. Take him home. He has a lot of soul searching to do, Roman proclaimed. The 4 men picked him off the ground and started carrying him away, his mother following close behind. Now that that's dealt with, I say we get this marriage underway. Cynthia, are you ready? The old priest asked. I am. Marvin didn't remember being carried away from the church and just being thrown onto the living room floor. He heard his mother pleading with the acolytes, saying she'd done her best, that Marvin was mentally stunted. He should be sacrificed for his weakness, but not her. Her voice was a million miles away. In his brain, she was right. He didn't care anymore. Let Shou'loth eat him. The acolytes picked him up and sat him at the kitchen table. One held him tight, while another took his hand and laid it on the wood. The 3rd man produced a hammer and a nail. Marvin realized what was about to happen, and suddenly he cared very much about his life. Mother, please stop them. Don't let them do this to me, please. Her hand struck hard. Stop mewling and take your punishment, she snarled. The nail drove straight through his hand into the wood below. Hot pain shot through his arm. The room spun. He heard a second whack of the nail and lost consciousness. 3 days out, Marvin weaved in and out of the waking world. Both hands had been nailed to the table. Blood seeped out of the wounds, creating puddles below his palms. 2 days passed with no food or drink. They'd taken his mother, or she had left him to die. Either was fine by him. He always thought he deserved the abuse. It took a kitchen crucifixion to change his mind. The claw of a hammer worked its way under the nail head slowly. The handle jumped back hard, ripping the nail up from the wood. Blood and pus bubbled up from the wound. Marvin's eyes snapped open. The new pain was sharp and persistent. Towering over him was Roman, his cheeks curved into a Cheshire Cat smile. He did the same for the next hand. Tilting the hammer back, he pulled hard, sliding the nail up and out of the wood, but this time it did not clear the hand. Releasing the claw from the nail head, Roman yanked the nail from the infected flesh with one solid tug. Marvin stifled a scream. His eyes became pools of tears. Blood gushed from the wound, and Marvin felt ill. Jerking hard away from Roman, he fell from his seat, banging his head against the hardwood with a sickening thwap. Blackness again. Deep, unending blackness. One day out, he felt warm water being poured over his body. It smelled of flowers. He didn't want to look. He'd hoped he had died. Finally, he opened his eyes. Above him was Cynthia, reciting a prayer he'd never heard. With great effort, he tried to lift an arm, but it wouldn't budge. Forming words with sandpaper lips was also failing. He knew he had muscles and a tongue, but they refused to respond. He could tell he was in the church. The redwood beams across the ceiling gave it away. There was an IV bag above him with a slow drip of saline. He also knew he was naked, but he was too weak to care. She continued to pray, gliding the warm cloth over his skin. The words stabbed at his brain. Their timbre unsettled him. Cynthia looked into his eyes. He could see regret, or maybe just sadness. A small line of water trickled into his throat. He coughed. She bent down to his ear. "I'm sorry, my love. I know none of this makes sense. I don't understand it either, but it's not our place to question Shou'loth. I'll never forget you. You'd have been a great husband," she whispered. Picking up a syringe full of yellow liquid, she injected it into the IV tube. Blackness a third time. The day of Marvin's 16th birthday. For the second time, the ruby bell rang for the faithful. They congregated outside the church. It couldn't accommodate them all. Its doors hung open, a gaping maw, pews inside full with elders looking like rotten teeth. This was a special day, though many of the farm's residents didn't know. They strained to see what was unfolding inside. Everyone was quiet, listening as non-Euclidean sound waves created an unsettling prayer to Shou'loth. Cynthia shook Marvin awake. He hadn't moved, still pinned to the altar by weakness. She wore a long white dress with black trim. A gold chain belt hung around her hips, a ceremonial knife encased in a jeweled scabbard clasped to it. Her red hair swayed about her shoulders as she moved. To her left was her husband, Roman, in his matching priestly vestments. To her right was Marvin's mom, who wore a black mourner's dress and veil. They stared back at him with inhuman eyes. He could hear the prayer, but could not tell which of them was reciting it. Cynthia raised her hand, and the noise stopped. "My fellow faithful, today is a momentous occasion. 15,000 years ago, Shou'loth was banished to beyond the void by the foul god named Anu. Curse be to his followers." "Curse be to his followers," the crowd responded. "But today, we will open a portal and usher our goddess back to this reality. United again with the world she helped create, we will see a new golden age like our ancestors of Rin. Those of you in the pews, stand and repeat the prayer you have been given." They followed the young woman's instruction. The building began to rumble. Marvin's mother and Roman looked to the ceiling. Their eyes flashed, becoming black orbs. Their mouths stretched to an unnatural degree. Beams of eldritch energy rocketed forth, ripping through the church's roof, cutting through the atmosphere. Time-space buckled just above Earth. A tear formed with radiant light 3 miles long. Bolts of reality-bending energy folded together along its edges and pulled apart, creating an opening. Shou'loth's blue hand, holding the gem of creation, began to slowly emerge. The chant continued. Cynthia looked out to the crowd. The entire community was entranced. Only one task remained, sacrificing Marvin. His death on his 16th birthday in front of the children of Shou'loth would provide the energy needed to keep the portal open. Praying only did so much. Drawing the knife from its scabbard, Cynthia looked down at Marvin. Unable to speak with his tongue, his eyes cried out to her. He was in so much pain. It was written all over his face. She loved him, but his death was Shou'loth's will. There was no choice. She'd always been pious, always did as she was told. But why must she do this? Why must it be him? Her heart ached and her faith waned. Life without him was no life at all. She knew what must be done. Nothing. She would do nothing. Without blood being spilled, specifically the blood of her true love, the portal would close on Shou'loth and she would be trapped beyond the void. Cynthia knew this would mean death, but after all she'd done, she felt it was deserved. She set the blade on the altar and waited. The spell began to weaken. Shou'loth's arm had breached the portal all the way up to the shoulder. Its light blue skin reflected the sun's rays. Suddenly, the eldritch beams from Marvin's mother and Roman failed, unable to continue without the energy from the sacrifice. The portal snapped shut with a thunderous clap, severing Shou'loth's arm and sending the limb plummeting into the Earth's atmosphere. For a brief moment, everyone came out of their trance, looking at one another like they'd just risen from a dream. Roman looked down to see Marvin very much alive, then back to his young bride. "What have you done?" She ignored him, placing her hand on Marvin's chest. "I love you, Marvin." From across creation, a bolt of retribution struck the tiny church at a hideous speed. It blew off the roof, slamming into Cynthia, and exploded outward. The Redwood Church's doors and windows blew out. Long, deep cracks traced up the ancient beams of wood. Blood dripped from the pews where skinless, quivering bodies lay. Marvin's thigh bone had been propelled with such force it sunk 4 inches into the wall across the room. No one in the church survived Shou'loth's wrath. Outside, the sounds of horrid screams were laced with tearful sobs to the goddess for forgiveness. The people of the farm were too injured to save themselves, too remote for outside help. One by one, their voices flickered out. 62 miles up and 30 miles to the north, a fireball hurtled towards the small mountainside town of Hall Ridge. It was the arm of Shou'loth still holding the gem of creation tightly. As the arm hurtled towards it, several citizens looked up and braced for the end of the world. Poor Marvin. He seemed like a nice kid. If you haven't already, check out The Village of Rin for the first part of this story. If you want to know what happens next, check out The Hand. Did Cynthia do the right thing? Let us know in the comments. If you like this Portents of Fear tale, consider joining our Patreon. There's a link in the description below. Want more horrific stories? Click on one of our other episodes on your screen now. Good night, Fearlings. Sleep well, if you can.